The fifth and the final part of the making of the Constitution, Chapter 2 of M. Laxmikant series. There were various committees formed in the Constituent Assembly to streamline the Constitution making process. So some of the major committees were the Union Powers Committee was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, Union Constitution Committee Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Provincial Constitution Committee Sardar Patel, Drafting Committee Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and there was an advisory committee on fundamental rights, minorities, tribals, and the excluded areas. It was headed by Sardar Patel, and this advisory committee had several subcommittees. You can go through the various members: J.P. Kriplani, C. Mukherjee, Gopinath Bardoy, and all. And Rules of Procedure Committee, it was headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and the States Committee, which was a committee for negotiating with the states. It was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and there was a steering committee. It was headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And of all these major committees, one of the most important committee was the drafting committee. So let us try to remember the date of the formation of this drafting committee. It was formed on August 29th, 1947. It was a 7-member committee. It was formed to prepare the draft of the new constitution, and this drafting committee was headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who were the other 6 members: N. Gopal Swami Iyengar, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Dr. K.M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, N.M. Rao, T.T. Krishnamachari. These were the members, other members of the drafting committee. Enactment of the constitution. The Dr. B.R. Ambedkar introduced the final draft of the constitution in Constituent Assembly on November 4th, 1948. Remember this date. And this draft was passed on November 26th, 1949. To commemorate this significant historic day, it is celebrated as Constitution Day. Then the Constitution, as adopted on November 26, 1949, contained a preamble. It had 394 articles, 8 schedules. Some of the provisions of the Constitution came into force immediately on the date of 26th November 1949. Some of these provisions like citizenship, elections, etc., provisional parliament, etc., they came into force immediately on the day of the adoption of the Constitution. The remaining provisions came into force on January 26th, 1950, that is the day when we celebrate the Republic Day of India. Okay, and with the adoption of the Constitution, all the provisions under the Indian Independence Act 1947 and the Government of India Act 1935 were repealed. Criticism of the Constituent Assembly. It was elected by a limited franchise. First of all, it was indirect election, and that is the members of the provincial legislative assemblies elected the members of the Constituent Assembly in direct election, and the election was by limited franchise. Not everyone were voting and electing the members of the provincial assembly. Only the educated members and members having property were having the franchise. It was not a sovereign body, as it was, first of all, it was formed on the principles of the British government, that is the cabinet mission plan. Then how it can be sovereign body? This is one of the criticism. Then it took a lot of time for the Constituent Assembly to frame the Constitution of India, whereas the American Constitution was framed only in 4 months. It was dominated by Congress, domination of lawyers and politicians, and representation of other professionals was not significant. It was dominated by Hindus. These were some of the criticism of the Constituent Assembly. Some trivia, let us see some facts which may be important for your UPSC prelims examination. And the chief draftsman, the person who wrote the Constitution, the chief draftsman was S.N. Mukherjee. Then who was the calligrapher? Calligrapher of the Indian Constitution was Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. He had handwritten the original text. It was beautified by people like Nandalal Bose and all. And the elephant was adopted as the symbol of the Constituent Assembly. So originally, the Constitution of India did not make any provision for writing the Constitution in Hindi language. Later on, official constitution in the language. Later on, this provision was made by the 58th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1987, which inserted a new article 394A in the constitution. So thank you guys.